Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Conversations with Daron Jenkins. I'm your host, Daron Jenkins, and joining me on the show today, I'm looking forward to this conversation very much. Steven Bernstein, I'm an accomplished American filmmaker who has done so much, and he's had a great career. Cinematographer, director, screenwriter, author, career stretching back almost 50 years, which is amazing, especially in this industry. Thank you for being on the podcast.
No, my great pleasure. It upsets me when you say 50 years. I was hoping that nobody would notice, but I guess it is 50. It is 50 years. And they're like dog years. A year in the film industry is like 7 years. So that means I'm 300 years old, I think.
Well, in this industry, it's to do 50 years is a great accomplishment because you know, and I know how fickle the industry can be,
Yeah.
and to be able to kind of, and to do it successfully on multiple levels, that's to me is the more impressive feat. Because
Kind of like it's a constant reinvention because I kept having different careers, and I sometimes see these bio pieces they would do in the British newspapers where some successful person would recount their life. I, it always makes it sound like they planned it, but I think that if we're honest with ourselves, there's a series of vaguely connected accidents that we then create a narrative. And so much of what we do in film is about creating narratives, real or false, that it was all part of a grand vision. 'Cause the first thing I was BBC, I was trained as a writer and director. And then only because music videos were being invented around then and people needed BBC equipment on weekends to shoot bands. So we would shoot against a white sheet, blue sheet, and give it to a record company so they'd see what the band looked like. And then somebody said, well, why don't we do little stories around these songs? So the A&R men of the record companies might have even better impression of the band. And then we got some dancers, and then we started doing some colored backlight, generally blue backlight with wet downs on exteriors. And it got bigger and bigger. So within 4 years, there was Duran Duran, and it was £1.5 million, and that was $5 million in American dollars, huge extras and 7 or 8 cameras, and it was getting huge. And then got spotted by RSA and by Tony Kaye and doing big commercials. And then suddenly I was commercials DP. That was career number 3 at that point. And then somebody wanted a kind of a music video commercials look for a feature film. Then it was feature films. So that's career number 4. And then TV, I guess, was in between there. British TV, career number 5. Then came over to America because of like Water for Chocolate. And then suddenly big American films, dramas first, then big comedies like Bulletproof, then SWAT, and then little independents. Suddenly this little film called Monster no one heard of, career number 6,
yeah,
which wins an Oscar. And then everyone wants to be doing independent films. Then directing theater all through those years because I was a writer principally, so career number 7. Wrote some textbooks, an educator, career number 8. And then that sounds like a lot, but really I think it was kind of what my book's about, which is don't gamble everything on a single bet. So I kept thinking that whatever I was doing was going to fail and I better have a fallback. So I kept going to my fallbacks, which would become my new career. Yeah, it's been a long time, but not a long time doing one job, but in one industry.
oh man, I usually ask people, I'm curious what you'll answer to this is, with so many pivots, so many, not pivots, but like stacking bricks almost, um, as a kid, like was filmmaking something that you had even like what? Because there's some people who come on the show and they're like, oh no, at 7 years old, I knew I wanted to be a filmmaker. I knew I wanted to do this. And was that the same for you? Or like, because I know you have a background in philosophy as well.
Yeah. Well, all those people that said they knew they wanted to be filmmakers at 7 are lying, just so you know. I mean, that doesn't mean we shouldn't love them because people tell lies. In fact, the best thing you do as a writer is have a character who lies because people lie about what's important.
Mm.
That will be a secret between the audience and the character. So you know that character is lying to somebody else. And then right away, you'll have an insight on that character saying, well, this is important enough for them to lie about. So this must be very important. It goes to their nature. So when people say they knew at 7 that they had a vision of what they want to do, they're trying to suggest that their life has an order in the
Right.
chaos that everybody else experiences. I don't think anyone really knows at 7 what they want to do. And if they do, they're going to miss out a lot on life, because the secret to being a good director, speaking to all sorts of people, giving them insights into how they might play the character, trying to have an understanding of some neurotic impulse of somebody on set who suddenly starts screaming at you, as has happened to me. Someone spit at my face who I was directing, spat in my face, and I just held their hand, held them, gave them a hug, talked them through the scene, got to the other end, and waited 3 days for the apologies. But to do that doesn't mean that I have preternatural interpersonal abilities. It means I've got life experience that I can draw on, so that when we're talking about the invention of a character, I can give some reference to an experience I've had or a person that I've known. That's what a director does, is provide some sort of reference for the performers and for the crew. And for that, you need life experience. So
Hmm.
I guess I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wrote a lot when I was a kid. I was very unhappy, I think. Introspective, poetry, yes, poetry. And it went to my misery. I now look back, the imposition of narrative, and thought, why did I write? Well, I know why anybody writes. It's you want to impose your order on the chaos of the world.
Hmm.
So if you can't enjoy the world as it is, well, then bloody well reinvent it. And that's what writers do, is they're reinventing a world that they can inhabit, that they find more nurturing than the world they already live in. So I guess
Hmm.
I was trying to invent a better world. And then, then it was BBC, and then all the formal education about how you must direct, and then music videos. And I realized that you can impose all you want, but really it's more about discovering a truth rather than the truth that you want to impose. So that's when I realized that art isn't an end, it's a process.
Wow. That's some heavy. That's I never really thought about the director in that fashion, and I'm ashamed kind of in a way because from the outside, you know people just assume a lot about what the director does and how impactful their experience happens to be on what they're doing. Like they assign that usually to either the actor or the screenwriter, right? They always kind of assign directors more like traffic cop, but I think
Television,
that
in
makes
television,
sense.
in episodic TV, it is traffic cop. But remember, you're, as a director, the thing, your biggest job is managing other people, but it's creative management. So you're trying to get the artists that you're working with, production designers, cinematographers, editors, musicians, crew, and the actors, to be the best version of themselves.
Right.
And that's a complicated thing, because a film set's a crucible. You're working under great pressure. There's huge money involved, which means that people will fire you very quickly because they don't want you to be the risk. So when you're at risk of losing your job at any moment, that you're working with other people, and of course, to get your next gig as a freelancer, we're almost all freelancers in the film business, with some exceptions, you've got to shine. So not only do you have to be humble and facilitate others, but you have to get a certain amount of attention to yourself, otherwise you won't get the next gig.
Yeah.
So that dynamic is a hard one. And as a leader of that crew, the director has to recognize a person's vulnerabilities and weaknesses and make them feel safe. You've got to create an atmosphere that seems non-threatening. So people do the most important thing you do on a film set, which is take risks. And when they take risks, they've got to know that they'll be rewarded if they succeed, and they won't be punished if they fail. There's no ridicule. They have to know that you listen. So you have to show your ability to listen rather than speak. They have to know that if they do something, that they will be credited. And so you have to give good credit. You will, as a director, make mistakes. You have to be able to apologize, and very complex three-part apology. Acknowledge what you did, acknowledge the damage that it did, and then acknowledge how you're going to change in the future. If you can't do that, then people won't follow you because they don't think you're fair. And then you have to realize the relative value of an editor as opposed to a DP to the designer, and how it fits into the grand plan. So you got to have a vision of the thing. And then people got to feel they're contributing all the time. So you've got to leave room for your contribution. Sometimes you don't know what you're doing. A lot of times the director, you have no idea what you're doing. So you have to do the most important thing in leadership, which is show vulnerability and say, I start every day on a film set, call the crew together, say, I don't know exactly what I'm doing today. There's some things I'm uncertain about. I'm going to need your help because the scene that I'm doing seems like it's not working on the page. Can you help?
Right.
And then you get people stepping up. Now, that's All that stuff together is a fairly complicated undertaking. That's just the management of it. Then
Right.
you got to think about the grand vision that you've got to have. Now you got to think about where it's going to take you. And they say typically a director makes 1,000 to 2,000 decisions a day. A third of those are going to be wrong. Got to pivot from those mistakes. So it's a big job.
It's a big job. And then I mean, when you don't even get into the technical piece of it, you know what I mean?
Coverage.
And and when you start talking about these like films of like massive scale, and I'm sure you've done more than a few of the Monster is one, films of massive scale. Like I always wonder, as a director, a lot of what you said, you get. I mean, this is from a lot of both life experience and professional experience that you can kind of share this feedback or information with us, and but when you're just starting as a filmmaker, when you're new to the process, I gotta believe that has got to be one of the scariest. But like you said, money is attached to this, especially there's not going to be a lot of patience around, not like, oh, sorry, I didn't know, kind of. That's unfortunately not going to fly. But I think what bodes well is when a person has the personality to rally people around them to kind of create a collaborative effort on the project of sorts, because then you can kind of leverage your people skills in some form shape,
Yeah,
and it does also help to have, like, a person like yourself, a great DP, a great associate producer, I mean associate director. Like it's good to have a great team underneath you, but
sure.
it must be scary.
But what you're going to, I think, is even for people starting out, this is a news alert. Character matters. People don't hire you just because you're good. In fact, when I was a young DP and I shot some huge music videos, huge commercials, and won a Cannes Golden Lion, I was top of the tree and I was really young. And I got the arrogant disease and I thought that I was better than everybody. And I was aggressive and rude and disrespectful. Very famous, still working director, very old director now, directed huge, huge movies. I was doing a commercial with him in London. He took me aside. He said, "You think you're good, aren't you?" I said, "Well, I guess." He said, "No, you're really good, but you're also." He used the C word, which you don't use in America, but he said, and that's not going to play. He said because there's lots of people who are really good, maybe someone not quite as good as you,
Right.
but they're a lot easier to work with, and they're the ones that are going to survive. He said you better learn to work with others, respect others, and find humility even where you don't think it's offered. Otherwise, you're never going to survive. And that was hugely, because he's such a famous individual, it was hugely important advice. And I've been humbled many times since by making many mistakes and terrible catastrophes and huge errors. But I now realize that when I hire people, even PAs, assistants,
Right.
look to their reputation. Do they show up on time? Simple thing like showing up on time. Hey,
Yes.
if you're a focus puller and you show up 20 minutes late and you keep the director, the DP, the actors, the producers, the production design, and the entire location waiting, you just cost that production probably $40,000 just
Yeah.
by being that late. And you do it once, people are going to think, well, maybe it was an honest error, maybe there was traffic, or maybe there's a character issue here. That's where we don't have time to work out whether it's an honest mistake or not, so you don't make mistakes.
Right.
So the old rule is on time is 30 minutes early, early is an hour early, and on time is late. So that way, I've been working this, as you say, nearly actually over 50 years. I've never been late in all those commercials, a couple hundred commercials, a couple hundred music videos, God knows how many episodic TV shows, how many features, TV shows, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, never late, because I'm always making sure that I'm an hour early, which is on time.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing within my filmmaker community we talk about a lot. I'll think a lot, which is you're going to see the same people up the ladder as you're going to see coming down the ladder. And one of the things that you really kind of want to do at some point, like as a filmmaker, is you want to create. There's a reason why certain filmmakers work with the same teams all the time. I mean, it's not just because they're friends, it's because they they can rely on them. It saves money
Yeah,
to rely on those people. And
absolutely.
you've got a lot of other things going on that you shouldn't have to worry about, what everybody else is doing. Like it's almost like an NFL coach in a ways where when you've got multiple coordinators, you're not walking it over to them every 5 minutes, asking them what they're doing. You're trusting that they're doing what they're supposed to do because that's what they're supposed to do. And if you can build like a team of people that you can trust, and you only get to do that if you treat people well.
Yeah,
People don't want to work for crazy people.
that's why the Buffalo Bills won on Sunday night, because you hear all the players being interviewed. They all said, "Did you panic? Was there a lot of talk going on?" They said, "No, we just all knew what each of our jobs were." And that's significant. You don't want a lot of drama around you. These things let's talk about lying again. I talked about how when you're writing a character, have them lie because you get an insight.
Right.
But as a person on set, not only do you always have to be on time, you can never lie. Because as a director, for example, if I directed an actor and I'm nervous my first day as a famous actor, and they do a take and they go, "That was great." Seems like a throwaway line, just being courteous. If
Right.
the actor thinks they were terrible and they heard me say it was great, that means they will never believe another word that I say. Not because they think I'm an endemic liar, but they
True.
know that I'm capable of lying. So then later in the show, when they do a great performance on a tough scene, and they say to the director, which is what they're always looking for, "How was it?" And I say, "It was great." They go, "Oh, the liar told me it was great." I don't know whether it's great or not. I'm going to try something else. So I always make a point of telling everyone the brutal truth in a loving fashion. Production
Yeah.
designer shows me something. No, that doesn't work for me. I try to say why. If I don't know why, it just doesn't work. We got to move on.
Right.
DP does a lighting setup for me, and I say, "You know what? Doesn't work for me." Do they resent me? Maybe initially. But if everyone knows that from day one, I tell the truth. When I say that actor didn't work, I see what you're trying, doesn't work for the scene. Let's try something else. Here's some backstory for you. Later in the movie, when I say to them, "Hey, come here. That what you just did was great." They glow because now the truth teller told them they were great and they know it's real. So these simple character lessons that we think we can overlook at the development of our skills as in color photometry as cinematographers, understanding the nature of perspective as designers, understanding playable notes as directors, that stuff's all learnable and can be learned pretty quickly, frankly. But having those elements of character, being punctual, being honest, being able to apologize, giving other people credit, shirking credit for yourself, taking responsibility when you've done something wrong, showing your weaknesses and vulnerabilities. You do those things, and I don't care if you're a PA or a director, you've got a bright future. Blame others, lie, be late and self-absorbed, and I don't think you're going to make it here.
Yeah. I wish, I could bottle that moment right there and just share it with filmmakers all the time because I think people take that piece of the puzzle for granted. And even as an actor, kind of, I remember doing, I think it might have been Malcolm X, and I think our call time was supposed to be 4 a.m. or something like that. And I mean, it's just maybe it was just me. I don't know, but for me, there early wasn't even about. To be honest, it wasn't even about like what the director was going to think about. It was about I want to be on the set early enough to kind of be so when I start, I'm just totally complete and prepared, And I think when you're like, I don't understand how anybody can be late for something. And the reason why, because you end up rushing whatever it is you're doing because you're late. I mean, or, it's just weird. It just feels weird when I'm late.
Another great point you're making about rushing, which is the same thing. There's certain things we associate with anxiety and certain things we associate with being relaxed. One of the key virtues that we bring to a film set is how relaxed we can make ourselves. Number one in our processes, particularly for an actor. Now, you get a young actor on set, they walk on set, they stay in their trailer, so delighted to have a trailer, or Honey Wagon, whatever it is. They're going to stay there as long as possible, pull out the phone, show it to their friends, look where I
Yeah.
am. Look, here's a bit of my taped name is on the door. And then they pretend they don't remember, so they got their size, and they mosey onto set a few
Right.
minutes before the take. And suddenly there's 75 pairs of eyes. Working with me on SWAT, there'd be 1,700 pairs of eyes looking at you. Giant Moscow lights, squibs wired on the stuntmen, heavy wire pulling some crane, some plane that were crashing on the Second Street Bridge. There's noise, there's action, there's enormous numbers of people. And now comes the time for you to say your line. Now, as you know as an actor, key thing is listening. So
Yep.
before you respond to somebody, the other actor, you got to listen, even though you know what the line is. Think about it. Decide what your answer is and answer. That's the authentic. That's what you're looking for. But when you're nervous and when you've just walked on set a second before and all those eyes are there and all those people are thinking, why is he getting paid more than I am or she getting paid more than I am? Then you rush the line.
Yeah.
You show that you're anticipating it, right? And it fails. So that's the other reason that not only should you get early, but once I'm early, even when I was younger, I'd wander onto the set and I would be there. I would say to every young actor, get on set early, hang out with the camera crew,
Yes.
craft services, walk around the set so that you're utterly comfortable so you can take that moment. Biggest lesson for actors everywhere and for everybody in their job is, think fast, move slow. So you may be thinking you got a lot to do, but slow down. Because when you slow down and there's that, and you can drop the shoulders, then suddenly the performance gets better, not only for the actors, but for the DP, for the production designers, for the grip, for everybody else, is don't panic. There's nothing to panic about. And the more you can relax, the better it's going to be. One of the ways of relaxing is being early for things, because you may be bored, but by the time your turn comes, you'll be relaxed.
That is so true. It feels just feels I feel like when I'm more relaxed like that, when I'm totally prepared, I'm relaxed, I'm on set, ready. I'm open to receive whatever is coming at me, both in the scene and direction from the director. I think it just feels like I'm more receptive to that information than if I've got my mind other places and I'm thinking about. To be honest, I've never had a trailer, so that would have been great. But even if I were, to me, it's more important to be on the set. I want to know everything that's going on. I want to talk to the producers and I want to talk to the all gaffers and everybody. I just want to know what everybody's doing. Because
And then you got friendly faces looking at you, which makes you even more relaxed. The other thing is preparation. People ask me a lot about how much you prepare. I prepare obsessively. As a director, I work out what every camera move is going to be and what it means at that moment, because I think that we speak to the audience with many languages. It's not just storytelling. Everyone says we're storytellers. Nah, we're not storytellers. We're filmmakers, and we sometimes use story in the service of the discovery of character, which is
right,
what the audience is really interested in. I always say that if you want to know what filmmaking is, here's the one sentence. All films are mysteries. It's that simple. All films are
mm,
mystery. What's the mystery? It's the mystery of the human condition of character. We are interested in character, and we don't know why they're behaving the way they are, or we don't know what they're going to do in difficult circumstances, and we don't know what their destiny is. That's a mystery. So when we start with a character's journey, we want an empathic connection to them. We want to care about them. We're going to follow them, and then we see where we're going to go. The language that we speak in is storytelling, sure, but also a camera movement. When the camera just slowly pushes in at a key moment, the audience will feel in their gut that that moment's key because the camera moved forward. If I light a character with all backlight and don't fill their face in, they're going to seem mysterious, like Marlon Brando seemed in Apocalypse Now, just
right,
because I haven't lit their face. If I light something with blue light, it's going to seem depressed and dark and unhappy. If I light it with warm light and a lot of frontal fill, then it's going to seem more upbeat and happy. That's not storytelling. That's another language that's parallel to the storytelling that we do, by which we influence audience. So I break down each of these categories: production design, music, what music I'm using in every single setup, what the shape of the composition is going to be, what the editing is going to be, fast cutting or slow cutting, long shots or close-ups. I do all that so that when I walk on the set, another reason I'm so relaxed, besides being early, is I know everything I'm going to do. And
mm,
then, Darren, what do? I throw it out. I never go with my plan. I create the plan so that I'm relaxed. But then once I'm on set, I want to discover the truth of the moment, both from me, from the actors, and from the crew, and I want us all to improvise based on the inspiration we provide one another. And I know that if it goes wrong or we go off course, I've always got the plan to fall back on. But I want to fall back on that because it's stultifying creatively to have a plan. When I write, for example, I write without an outline, without a plan, and I never write to the three acts. I never write a screenplay as a screenplay first. I write as a novel first. I get the backstory, discover the character, and then as a very last thing I do, I impose the narrative. But if I was to read one of those books like Save the Cat or Kill the Dog or whatever they're bloody well called, or Story or any of those things, and page 10, you got to do this, page 20, then in the end, you're just writing to serve narrative, and everything does become storytelling and nothing else. But we don't live life as a story. We live life as a series of feelings, experiences, observations, and then sometimes someone presents a narrative to us, which may be real or may be entirely contrived, that their way of explaining themselves to us. But I can't write that way. I've got to write in the chaos, embrace the chaos, and then discover the bigger truth of things. And I want my actors to do that and my crew to do that, which is embrace the chaos and then discover the bigger truth. Joan Didion, one of my favorite writers, once said, I write to discover what I think. And that's what I feel about all
Interesting.
creative process, is I create to discover what I think. I don't know what's right for the scene until we start working.
Glad you said that because as a writer, as a fellow writer, I have never like I've read those books and I can honestly look, I'm not here to discount anybody. If you want to write a book, write a book. It may work for some people. Everything is not one size doesn't fit all. But for me, I'm saying as you, I tend to just write in streams. I can't say, okay, let me write act one now. Okay, and let me write. I will brainstorm a bunch of stuff, write a bunch of stuff down, um, and I will then let it sit for a little bit, maybe a couple weeks. Then I will go back to it and I get a fresh look at what I'm like, oh, that's terrible. Let me get rid of that and pare that down. But then, even in the second version of that, I don't even write it as a book. I kind of write as because I see what I want it to be in my head, and I kind of I use music as kind of my inspirational drive, and I just write until I have gotten the entire story out, and then I'll let it sit some more, and then I'll start tearing it down to reformulate it as a
Yeah,
structured piece.
I get it. Makes sense.
It's just I think like I said, the books are good, I guess, for some people because there are some people who tend to want that structure of sorts. But
Yeah, but because they want it doesn't mean they should want it. And I'll be more contrary. I don't think those books are a good thing. I don't think art should have an orthodoxy. Look at a painter like Rothko. Do you
mm,
think someone gave a book that said, "Here's how to paint"?
right,
And the paint should be, you should be paint a figure, and they should be one third of the way down from the top of the frame, one third from the left of the frame.
right,
You should use the golden mean. You should use these sort of triangles. Rothko painted some broad brushstroke lines across a canvas, and one of the most significant artists of the 20th century. I don't think anyone told the abstract expressionists how to paint. I don't think anyone told the impressionists how to paint. I think they discovered it because impressionism was a big departure from the way oil had been applied to canvas prior to that. And then you got pointillism, something different again. Then you got the cubists, different again. If someone had written a book that said, "Here's the way, the one way that you should paint," then maybe we wouldn't have had the rich history of painting that we have. In music, if someone had said 1950 that all music has to be classical, and we
yeah,
wouldn't have rock and roll, if atonalism wouldn't have been invented, if they said in theater that everything has to be the well-made play and of two acts, then we never would have had Beckett in contemporary theater. In dance, there wouldn't have been, if everything was ballet, we wouldn't have had contemporary dance. So only in film, only in film, only in film do we write books about the one way that you're meant to write screenplays. I mean, Save the Cat actually says, by page 10, you got to do this. The
yeah,
one way, this is an art. Are we mad? Are we mad to believe that in our one art, there's one rule? And then people say, well, Aristotle said it. Well, dude, Aristotle believed that the universe revolved around the earth, that women had just a different number of teeth,
Right.
that slavery was okay. Those are
Right.
all remarks from Aristotle. How do we feel about those? So maybe Aristotle didn't get it quite right about poetics either. Doesn't mean that wasn't a smart guy. I think he was a super smart guy, but he got a lot of things wrong. And by the way, even with smart guys, things change and evolve. And
Yeah.
art, most of all, changes and evolves. Doesn't mean that Rembrandt wasn't a great painter, but I think Rothko's a great painter as well. I think if Rembrandt had seen a Rothko, he would have said, "What?" But he probably would have also said, "Fellow artist, let him do what he wants."
I agree with everything. So when you were starting out, did you set goals for what you wanted to accomplish? And like, do you look back at those goals and and say, okay, I accomplished this, didn't accomplish this, there's still things that
Yeah, I had goals. I'm not sure they're always virtuous. I think it was more revolved around things sexual and what to do on a Saturday night. So I don't think that I was particularly singular in my vision of my creative future when I was young, but that's what being young is kind of about. A couple of great one-liners, which is how do you make God laugh? Make plans. So I probably did have plans, none of which were, fully realized. The other thing is 90% of the things we worry about never occur. So why should we worry? Because there's a whole bunch of other things we don't know about. The other thing is the best things in our life never announce themselves. The worst things are always there. So we're always aware of the bills, our illnesses, the tragedies that envelop and surround our lives. But rarely do we know that there's some epiphanal moment that's about to befall us by some new job, some new partner, some new opportunity. They don't announce themselves. Only the grim stuff. No one's ever slow in sending you a bill each month. You know that's coming. But someone's about to hire you doesn't say, hey, next month I may be hiring, just so you know. So for all those reasons, I have to say that life is a more joyous series of happy accidents than we realize. I may have had plans. I went in an entirely different direction. I was going to be a writer exclusively, and then ended up shooting music videos. And then I was going to be the world's greatest cinematographer and shot an Oscar-winning film. Got the American Society of Cinematography nomination for Magic City and won lots of other awards. And then I thought, this is pretty good, but I want other means of expression as well. And then it wasn't until I wrote my novel that I realized that one of the most satisfying things that I do is write novels, because it allows me to get the heart and the complexity of characters. And then, not coincidentally, of all those things I've done, all those awards I've won, the videos I've shot, the commercials I've shot, everything else, what does everyone say the best thing I've ever done is the novel that I wrote. And yet, had you asked me 20 years ago, was I going to be a novelist? I would say, are you crazy? If you asked me 10 years ago, I was going to be a novelist, I would say, are you crazy? But like I was saying before, everything was out of scene to prepare as a director. I wouldn't have been a good director if I hadn't lived the rich life I had. I wouldn't have been a good novelist in this kind of radical novel, JRQ, which is fragmentary and a combination of techniques and a lot of things I borrowed from film. I became a good novelist because I had this rich background in film, which changed the way I wrote the novel. And that's why the novel is recognized now, I guess, if it's been recognized and it's getting all good reviews and like perfect scores on Amazon, all the rest of it. Not because I'm this great genius, but because I've been doing this life for so long that I had the opportunity to draw on my rich experiences and then provide a structure and insight into the human condition that we all share.
I was gonna you've mentioned, I mean, there's a few things there, but I want to talk a little bit about your book because it's interesting. Get Rich Quick, GRQ. What was so what's the motivation behind this book? I mean, this is essentially a book about kind of talks about crypto and something.
It's about a guy who, like all of us, is trying to make his way in the world. I guess it's not unlike raising money for a movie, maybe, because he has run out of money. He hasn't paid his mortgage in a very long time, or really any other bill. And he does what a lot of people do who are married and want to avoid conflict, which is he lies to his wife and he says everything's fine, even though they get an eviction notice. And he goes, wow, what a crazy mistake. I'm going to get right onto this mortgage company and straighten them out. because what do they think they're doing sending this document?
How
So
dare they?
how dare they? I'm so sorry, honey. I'm going to get on the phone to them right now. And he gets on the phone, and of course, to beg them to give him a few more months. And they point out that he hasn't paid any mortgage payments in 15 months, and time's up. And that was the day they're going to foreclose. So now he's got like 7 hours to raise the money to pay off this house. And unfortunately, then LA starts getting hit by some earthquakes, and his house is kind of crumbling. And he's ringing everybody he knows to borrow money. And then he meets a guy who says, "I've got big news. There's somebody named Steve Bernstein."
Wait, what?
Yeah, I appear in the novel. And he's about to do a movie. And the movie's called GRQ. And this movie's about a guy who in deep trouble and has lied to his wife. And he's got to raise some money to save himself. And when Steve Bernstein makes that announcement on television, he's making a movie about crypto and with a story, the price is going to go through the roof because a movie about a crypto coin is going to go through the roof. So this guy invests everything on the fact that Steve Bernstein's making a movie called GRQ, and the movie GRQ is about this guy looking at Steve Bernstein making a film about GRQ. So that's the story, and then things go kind of tragically wrong and tragically good and tragically wrong, and Steve Bernstein turns out to be a bit of an asshole and doesn't suggest investment in crypto after all, and then lots of other things. Now, by the way, I don't play myself in the movie. Somebody plays me. I play somebody else. So it
Okay.
gets crazier and crazier and crazier, and it's a fun ride. And that's what the book is about. So it's a bit about making films. It's a bit about lying. It's about the nature of relationships. It's comic because our lives are so tragic. He borrows money from his mother. He borrows money from his daughter. And he keeps lying to his wife, and he keeps begging other people to not, pursue him for his debts and not to foreclose on him. And yes, absolutely, he does terrible things. And maybe we haven't done those things specifically, but I bet we've all done something kind of like it. And that's what the book's about.
Oh yeah. I mean, as you're telling me about this, I'm like, oh yeah. I mean, this is going to be up a lot of people's alleys because they're going to go, oh, I've done that.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, when I was a kid, like young, like probably like 9, 10, I would get into trouble for dumb things with my mom, and I would always try to lie about it. Your mom, they know, and she would always, I mean, she would, you know, lay into me, whatever. But what she also did was she would explain why she was upset. She would explain why she was wrong. And she always, and what I, as a grown man, started to understand was what you were saying, which is lying is people only lie when they're fearful of something. Okay. They don't lie when some things are going good. No one lies. Is quite upfront about how much money they're making and how their jobs are going, whatever. It's not until they are fearful of either what people are going to say or what people are going to do, that's when they lie. And so I've always just approached things where, like, I'm not afraid to do anything pretty much. I'm just, because I'm like, life's short, you whatever. And so I approach things with lying the same way. Much as like you, I'm not mean, but I'm also not going to like sugarcoat something, especially when it comes to if I think it's going to help somebody. I think this movie or this book is going to make people think about how they approach lying. Because I love the premise. I think it's fantastic. This going to be a movie? Because this feels like this is a
It
good
is. It
movie.
is. It is a movie. We shot it late last year.
Oh,
It's
awesome.
just we just finished editing it, and it's just going to market. So the big plan is the books come out exceeding our wildest expectations. We figured that maybe people would like the book. We never thought it would get be like all fives on Amazon, and getting these great. We won the Literary Titan Awards. We're up for another award nomination. We just thought it was
Wow.
a little book, and the book's like taken off in a big way. So first of all, we're holding the film release to see where else the book goes. It's increasing rapidly. I hope everyone gets a chance to read it because it's the best thing I've done, and it's a fun read. But that aside, the film's done and will come out late this year, beginning of next year. And
Okay.
then I'm also we're shooting in the next month or so, a one-man show, which me and six other versions of me, so seven Steve Bernsteins on stage at one time or another, and then a couple of versions of my wife as a giant puppet, and one of my investors is another puppet who also appears. And it starts with just me on stage talking about raising money for a movie. And then I raise the money and then casting. And then another Steve Bernstein comes on, that's the creative Steve Bernstein, goes, well, you shouldn't compromise for, making a film popular and trying to make money. And another Steve Bernstein comes on, who's only the money Steve Bernstein, goes, it's all about money. You got to make money. That's why you're in this industry. And then another Steve Bernstein is the moral Steve Bernstein, the English Steve Bernstein, the American Steve Bernstein. And then we're all on stage arguing with each other. So by about 20 minutes into the thing, we got seven Steve Bernsteins all shouting, screaming at each other as they try to figure out what the right way forward is. But it's all about the making of and the writing of the novel Get Rich Quick and the making of the movie Get Rich Quick, because it tells the story from when the novel was finished to the making of the screenplay to bringing in the cast to one of the cast quitting just before 2 weeks before shooting, raising new money, recasting, then the problems we had with shooting, the problems with editing, the test screen. So it's first of all, it's a lesson in how to make movies, literally from day one, how you
Mm.
raise money, how you write a film, how you make a film. But it's also about morality. It's also about selfhood, our individual dynamics. It's about marriage, all the same things the book's about, the one man show's about. And then we've got a blockchain company that wants to do a treasure hunt around the film, in which we give away there's a bracelet that's featured in the movie, which was worth about $250,000. And we're going to give that away to the person who figures out all the clues that we've hidden inside the book, inside the movie, and inside NFTs that we're going to be publishing. It's
Wow.
GRQ is working on like different levels. There's the book, there's the movie, there's the one man show, there's the treasure hunt, there's the NFTs, everything tied together. And meanwhile, Steve Bernstein appears in the book. Steve Bernstein appears in the film, but someone else plays Steve Bernstein. Steve Bernstein plays a priest. It's crazy.
Wow. So you got this going from every angle there is to go.
It's a wild adventure.
Can I ask who's playing you?
An actor that you won't have heard of. So
Okay.
interestingly, but someone who the crazy thing was the auditioning. So, but people come in and say, "I'm playing Steve Bernstein." I said, "But aren't you Steve Bernstein?" And I said, "Yeah." So some had looked at interviews I did on the internet and then did impressions of me. It's always a tough decision when you're playing a known or historic figure,
Yeah.
whether you play them as they are known or whether you do a different take on it. So the guy that got it did this really strange take on me where he was wearing shark's teeth around his neck and a lot of jewelry, and he played it very, very big. But I was horrified that that's what people are going to think that I'm about. But it was so funny. It was so funny that I had to hire him. So this guy who is not me plays me, and a much funnier version of me than I am.
I love this idea. It's great. Speaking of film, you mentioned film financing a couple times in this. Actually, I literally just hosted an event in New York on film finance for filmmakers. And I saw here you had put some energy behind invest the tax incentives in Greece. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. It
What
was.
drove that?
I was in Greece writing a screenplay, and the story was happening in Greece, so I was writing it there in Mykonos. And somebody recognized me at a table. I didn't know who they were, and they said, "Aren't you Steve Bernstein, the filmmaker?" The film director said, "Yeah." And he said, "Talk to me and my friends about films and how they get made." So I began talking a little bit. And a place called Scorpio in Mykonos, lovely restaurant if you haven't been. Um, they said, "Oh, and if you were to reinvent the Greek film industry tomorrow, because you come to Greece a lot, what would you do?" And I said, "Well, you need these tax incentives all around the world. Producers go to different countries or different states because the tax incentives. Now, that's not cynical, but if you have a state like Georgia, which gives you 25% of your budget back, just as a gift, they say, here's 25%, take it away, bring a movie here. Because it's so good to bring a movie to a community because it employs people, it trains people, it's publicity for the community. You use locations, you give people new skill sets. It's a great idea bringing a film to a community, even though it seems to cost a lot of money on paper. Ultimately, it's a value. And if you've got to pay for that privilege by offering tax incentives to people who come there, you should do it. New Mexico did it. They've got $1 billion industry. Vancouver in Canada did it. All of province Canada have tax incentives, and Greece didn't have one. So I said, well, number one, you better have a tax incentive and it better be aggressive. It's 40% Greece, one of the biggest tax incentives in the world.
Wow.
Secondly, infrastructure. You know, people think, oh, you just get a bunch of friends together and shoot a film. If you think professional crews are expensive, try working with a inexperienced crew to know what expensive is. Because when you've got a setup that's difficult, talking about SWAT before, I did a crashed an airplane onto the Second Street Bridge, a 3/4 inch airplane. We had 20 cameras. We had, I don't know, 700 or 800 lights, including giant Moscow lights. We had 400 or 500 squibs with blood bags on them going off. We had 40 or 50 stuntmen. We had Samuel Jackson. We had Colin Farrell. We had stunt drivers. We had a giant cable that went through a 1-ton plate that would pull this 3/4 inch plane to crash on the bridge. We had spark guns. We had camera crews for every one of those cameras. We had grips. We had electrics. We had makeup. We had 200 or 300 extras. That's a lot. And if I had somebody on that set who walked through the shot because they didn't know that you don't walk at a particular place when you're shooting, if someone was unsafe and hurt somebody so that we had to stop shooting, somebody on the key camera angle was an inexperienced focus puller, got distracted and pulled the focus, it was both operating and focus pulling at the same time, and we missed the key part of that sequence because they were distracted by doing too many jobs. That would have been disaster. And all of
Yeah.
that work from all those people and all that money to naught. So why not hire more people, each of whom would specialize in a single job so that nothing could go wrong? And that's why we have a big crew. So you need a trained crew to bring films to a country. So I said to people in Greece, well, you've got nobody here who's worked on big features. You need to have some film schools. And we built some film schools. And then when Americans and British European crews went there, they would have to allow for the shadowing of Greek crews to work with them so they would learn. And then I said that you need studios because America's got big studios, England's got big studios, you need studios. So they built a big studio in Thessaloniki, and they built in another studio just outside of Athens, Thessaloniki. And all those things happened, and that's what I suggested. Now, I didn't realize who I was speaking to. It was the representatives of the Greek government, and they invited me to Syros, a nearby island. The next day, I met the deputy minister of the South Aegean. I met the South Aegean minister. That led me to going to Athens, where I met the deputy prime minister and the American ambassador. And then that led to a bill that was introduced to the Greek Congress, the Greek Parliament, which was first named after me and then not, but still. And against great opposition, it passed. And they introduced a tax credit. They built the studios and they built film schools. And now there's nearly $1 billion worth of industry in Greece. So I'm honored to have helped. I'm glad that I wrote the white paper on which all that was all based. But there was great opposition to it. But for every local community listening, if you want to stimulate your local economy, if you want to train people in new skill sets, and if you want to give your young people a creative outlet to truly express themselves, bring film to your community by offering tax incentives.
Absolutely. I'm going to print T-shirts with that saying on there, man, because that's a 100% thing for sure.
Where are you located, Darren? Where do you live?
Well, right now I'm in Georgia, but I'm from New York. I'm in the NYC area.
Well, Georgia, of course, has a huge tax incentive.
Yeah.
My friend Gail Ann Hurd, who produced The Walking Dead, there, and lots of other people make films there, thanks to the Georgia tax credit. And they've stimulated the economy wonderfully there. New York State does have a tax credit. It's capped, but it's still very attractive. Connecticut has another one. It's crazy not to get in the game. The worry that local politicians have is a race to the bottom, that everyone's going to be offering a better deal than the next guy or next country or next state. But still, it's such a wonderful economic and creative incentive. I think it's worth doing.
Yes, sir. I have a question from the audience for you. I'll put it up here on the screen. Stephen, can you speak to the very first time that you raised funds to make a film and what that experience was like? That's from Haley. Hey, Haley.
Hey, Haley, it's surreal because it's such an anathema. I feel so uncomfortable dealing with money, talking about money. But I had to do it. I was making a film called Decoding Annie Parker, which was a script that my son and I wrote together. It's about cancer and about a wonderful woman, Mary Claire King, who discovered the genetic link between cancer and genetics, and a woman named Annie Parker, who survived 3 independent cancers, and particularly one called the BRCA cancer, which Mary Claire King discovered the origins of and changed the world, what these two women did. And had never met, by the way, until I made the film and I introduced them at the Seattle Film Festival, which was kind of cool. So I had to raise money for that. And I began calling people, and you discover certain things. Like, first of all, just like as a director, you can't lie. As someone seeking investment, you can't lie. So you have to say, film's a bad investment. You're probably going to lose money. Just so people know that, because otherwise you're seducing people into making investment that may not be satisfying for them. Tell them the truth. It may not be what they want to hear. I also discovered that so many people think that you got to attach actors to raise money. There's all this thing called
Yeah.
attachments. Get an actor and then you'll get money. And then as I studied it, because it took me 7 years to raise the money for Decoding Annie Parker, I discovered that the main model that's used by independent filmmakers is wholly faulty. Now let's talk about attachments. Who attaches to an independent film that has no money? An actor who's successful and is valuable in the marketplace, or an actor who can't find work? Usually, not always, it's usually the actor who can't find work. Okay, secondly, who do you as a director, half of what directors do is casting, half your job. So when you go to cast, you got to cast the best person for the job. But if you've got one actor who's willing to attach and 50 actors who aren't going to attach, and you've got to attach somebody in your belief, are you attaching the best actor, or are you attaching the warm body who's available? So now you've cast the wrong person, and you've cast a person who's probably not good, is probably desperate anyway for that role. So those are two things that are a catastrophic starting place. And then when you go to negotiate the actor's deal, they know that you're dependent on them, right? Because you're attaching them, you're raising money on their name. So are they going to give you a good deal? Are they going to charge more for their services than they would normally? So you're paying more for actors who aren't good and you never won in the first place. Mm-hmm. That's the main model that people use for getting independent film made. I said, to hell with this. I'm going to raise the money first, and then when I have the money, I'll go to these agents and say, hey, I'd like to speak to Helen Hunt. And they'll say, you can't speak to Helen Hunt. You're an independent filmmaker with no money. And I go, I've already got all the money in the bank, and I can pay her. And in fact, I'll offer her a guarantee, what's called pay or play,
Sure.
which means that even if we don't shoot, she'll still get paid. And
Right.
suddenly, all doors were open. And who did I cast? I got Helen Hunt, Oscar winner. Samantha Morton, two-time Oscar nominee. I got Aaron Paul, Emmy Award winner. I got Rashida Jones. I got Corey Stoll. I got Bradley Whitford, another Emmy nominee winner. My little movie, my little $3 million movie, I had more Emmy winners, Golden Globe winners, and Oscar winners than most major studio films because I had the money already. And unfortunately, people thought the writing was good. My son and I did the script.
Oh, yeah. Years ago, I had a friend of mine who was trying to get a film made, and supposedly, I mean, he had a few people attached, but I think it was, and he didn't get the film made, obviously. And I think it's because of what you were saying. I think the people who he had attached, because it took him so long to even raise the first, whatever million or whatever it was where he was trying to raise, those people weren't really, their box office draw wasn't there. And so it just, it just died on the table pretty much.
Yeah, and the problem starts with calling what we do the film industry. Industry implies that we make widgets or car parts. We're the film art. So rather than worried about peopling your commodity with value accessories that will make your product easier to sell, how about just making the best piece of art that you can? And get the actor who's appropriate. Get the DP who shares your vision. Hire experienced people who are more expensive than non-experienced people, but won't make mistakes and won't cost you a lot of money later and will be full of ideas. Create an atmosphere that's conducive to creative expression. Lead by facilitating others. Be open to suggestions. Show your own vulnerability. Learn how to apologize. Hire people of high character. Do all those things, and suddenly you make a film that is great, and great films make money. That's the best economy, rather than attaching somebody and following that tired and failed model. And don't make a film based on the 3 acts because it ain't necessary.
One more question from the audience before we wrap things up here, and this is from Nikishna. Hi, Steven. Thank you so much for speaking to us today. I'm truly enjoying learning about your career. I'm new to screenwriting and started writing writing a
Oh,
cozy
mystery.
mystery. However, I heard that the industry is I think this is about
Probably the industry doesn't want mysteries,
yeah.
they want horror, and she's trying to anticipate what the industry wants.
Would you please speak to genres that producers are looking for now and if mysteries, cozy mysteries are still popular?
Yeah, I wouldn't spend too much capital on trying to figure out what producers are looking for. There's a lot of producers out there, and most of them aren't super bright. Yeah, I mean that in a loving way. It just
Yeah,
means
yeah,
that
yeah.
bright in the way that no one can. Let me put it another way. Um, Producers would love to be able to anticipate what the next
Right,
rage is going to be,
right.
but they're not capable of that. Nobody is. So right now it's all horror film. Everybody wants horror films because horror
Yeah.
films are cheap to make and they do some box office. But here's the same thing. Let me tell you about the three acts again. 90% of all films rely on that same tired notion about the three acts. 95% of all films fail. 95% of films fail. Now, if you were working in a lab somewhere doing an experiment, mixing phosphor and, I don't know, iodine, and your experiment failed 95% of the time, would you begin to think, maybe this theorem I've got isn't sound and maybe I shouldn't use it? That's what I would do. So that's why I have abandoned the three acts. Well, it's the same thing with genres. Films don't succeed because they're in an individual genre. And producers won't give you money just because you write in an individual genre. And if you're going to write any genre right now, it's horror. That's what everybody wants is horror. But by the time your script's finished and it's out, it could be rom-coms again, or it could be action films again, or it could be cozy mysteries. I think about writing as I think about casting. It doesn't matter what you write. I care about the quality of what you write. And if you write characters that are brilliantly realized and complex and recognized as humans, then people are going to be drawn to your script. And how do you do that? You don't write to formula. You don't focus on story. You focus on the complexity of character. When I direct, tend to give contradictory notes, so an actor has to think about two things simultaneously. When I write characters, they have all different agendas that are independent of the narrative. Independent. They have childhood issues they're dealing with. They have obsessions or predispositions they're dealing with. They have anger they may be dealing with. They may have a sexual obsession. They may have a financial difficulty. All these things come into play that have nothing to do with story, but add a dimensionality to character. If you create characters that are really rich and complicated, then when people read your script, they're going to say, I want to invest in this. So what you're selling is not the latest genre. You're selling your unique vision attached to a quality bit of writing to do with your notional understanding of a complex world inhabited by complex characters. Do good stuff, it'll sell.
Real quick with characters, how much character development do you do with your projects? Do you like, because for me, when I'm writing, sometimes what I'll do is I will, like the main characters, I will know everything about that character.
You're exactly right. That's everything I focus on. The story doesn't matter.
Right.
We got to get away from this idea that the storytelling matters. We're not storytellers. Everything's about character. When I worked with John Malkovich, a dear friend, I gave John over 200 pages of imagined backstory about his character. And John countered with something equally large. And then we worked together and we developed this character. We knew so much about this character, none of which was referenced in the script at any point, but we knew that it was a film about a character in the 1950s. We knew what happened to him in the war. We knew that he liberated a concentration camp before he became a doctor. We knew that he lost a patient recently. We knew that he was married twice. All that was made up. But there was so much to draw on that we had a shorthand discussing the character. So everything is about character. The more you work on character, the better your story is going to be. And then only at the last do you bring story in. But first, you've got to have a complex character with a complex history and not know everything about that character, but know everything that character has experienced. And then your understanding of who that character is will be a nuanced and complex one because people respond to stimulus, to trauma, and to experience in different ways.
Yeah. I always think about it when I think about it like Miami Vice for me kind of was a place like the reason why I think of Miami Vice, the original series, is that as the show kept going, they kept layering out these characters, and
Yeah,
so you got to a point where you weren't watching the show because of the story. You were watching to see what happened to the characters. Did I care about them? And I like movies where I really truly care about what happens to these individuals, whether it's bad or good. I think that's one of the reasons why like some horror movies work, where you care, but almost in this like, curious way. Like I think when you write from the character's point, like when you write the characters first, it can take your story in places you never even thought it were going to go.
exactly. Look at Mike Lee. Mike Lee has very little story, but an enormous amount of character development based on improv that he does for sometimes a year before he shoots. You look at Happy Go Lucky and Sally Hawkins and Eddie Marsden, lived the lives those characters might have lived. They actually took the jobs that they had in real life, and then they came back and reported to Mike about what their daily experience was, and he incorporated into the script. So all these tangential things went off on, but it didn't matter because once the film started, you were living the lives of these characters. You cared about them deeply. Relatively slow pace of the narrative was insignificant
Right.
because the character observation by the audience was so fascinating. And that's the way the best films work, is the focus on character. You're absolutely right.
I mean, you should teach a master class. I mean, seriously, dude. I mean, this was going to, I can guarantee you this VOD for this podcast is going to be high. What's next for you? What are you working on that you can share with us? Anything that
Yeah,
we
well,
can?
I'm writing a TV show, which will be real soon. It's a big TV show, spin off
Awesome.
from something else. I'm working on a feature script in the UK, and another TV show over there. I'm flying over there next week to speak to the producers of that. I've got a new novel that I've got coming out next year called AI Bergerac, about someone who tries to write a novel using AI in the style of a writer who's recently departed. The writer's not departed after all. It becomes interesting. They compete with each other, which is a fun novel, which has got an advance. So I'm excited about that going ahead. And my one man show, which I mentioned, which is we're going to be shooting soon. And I'm just doing some rewrites. And the great comedian and artist Tom Walker is going to come over from the UK to direct it with me in it. So that's very exciting. And that's what I got going on. Quite a busy period, and of course GRQ is coming to the theater soon. So, and then I wrote two other books, textbooks. One called The Book of 10, which is kind of everything we talked about today, but reduced to little snippets of just 10 things to do for directing, 10 things to do as a cinematographer, 10 things to do as a producer, and then a book about the creative process itself, which comes out at the end of the year from a very big publisher called Routledge, which is about how creative process is applied in different aspects of the film industry, and that's a university textbook that'll be coming out in December.
Wow, man, you're not doing enough.
Right. And then there's my Instagram page called Steven Bernstein, director writer, where I do little observational things every day about the film industry, and I have talks like I'm having with you, much briefer, but people can go that to whenever they want. It's all free. I do it from love and the spirit of giving back. And there's a podcast called Filmmaker and Fans. I do with Vince Grimes, the former creative director of Google, and we provide that once a week free of charge. So I
Wow,
want to give
nice.
back to this. I know what it's like to be a young filmmaker. I want to help as many people as I can. And of course, GRQ the books on Amazon and all good bookstores, and it's in Barnes and Noble, and it's everywhere. And that's dominating my life because I thought it was just going to be a little thing I was doing on the side. And now it's the biggest thing in my life right now. Is this book is just like, I don't want to say it's taken
That's
off.
great,
I'm a
man.
filmmaker, and now the biggest thing in my life is a book. I don't know if there's something wrong with that or it's a good thing, but it's exciting.
And GRQ is going to be in theatrical release, right?
Theatrical release, theaters first, 20 cities, 10 screens in each. Then we'll see if we platform it to more all around the country and all around the world, either the end of this year or the beginning of next year.
Well, just so you know, if you ever need a production company, actually, you said something earlier today about how you can't predict what's going to happen to you, and I couldn't predict that what was going to happen to me recently, which is I'm going to be managing a studio in New York City.
Oh, fantastic.
So we're trying to be this place to help educate the community of filmmakers. There's a lot of people who they have some good projects, they just don't know what they're doing, where to go, or they just need a little guidance. And so having people like yourself come and come on this podcast is part of that. And I appreciate you taking the time and
Oh,
sharing your knowledge. And this was fantastic. I'm telling you, this is going to be, I know this is going to be very streamed. Come back
let me know how
anytime
it
you want.
does. I'd be delighted. It was a great conversation. You got a lot out of me, which is that you asked the right questions. So, and do let me know how it does, because it really is getting a lot of streams. That'll excite me. So thank you so much.
Well, absolutely. And come back when you like, I would love for you to come back when the movie's actually
Let's
been out in the
let's
theaters. And
yeah,
I'd
let's do
love,
that. Let's make a date of that. That's for sure. And
that's
then
awesome.
yeah, and then anybody who gets the book and reads it, they can write to me via you and let me know. Because I'm very strange this way. I love feedback. So I used to solicit people when they saw my movies just to write to me and tell me what they think of the movie. So when people get the book and read it, either direct message me on Instagram, Steven Bernstein, director writer, or write to Daron. I'm volunteering Daron as my conduit, but just let me know what you think so I know whether it worked or not for you. It'd be great. All
We're going
right.
to post it to our Substack. So there's that as well. So everybody
Thank you,
will
brother.
get the, thank you so much. Thanks everybody
No,
for being here.
my great pleasure.
Be sure to like and follow me at the Daron Jenkins on Instagram. Until next time. Oh, and don't forget, we're coming at you with another in-person event on September 24th at Planet X Studios in Brooklyn. Until then, stay safe, everybody, and we'll see you on the next podcast.
Amen.